This paper presents a multidimensional analysis and interpretation of Hannah Pearl Davis's podcast episode titled Andrew Tate and Radical Acceptance Pearl Reacts, released on June 20th, 2025 on our platform JustPearlyThings. The title of this paper is Bonnie Blue, Andrew Tate, and Radical Acceptance, Podcast Pearl Reacts. A brief description of the Pearl Podcast. The Pearl Podcast serves as a platform where the host, known for her conservative and critical stance towards contemporary feminism, analyzes transformations in gender relations, social structures, and cultural norms. In the episode under discussion, Pearl comments on a conversation between Andrew Tate, Bonnie Blue, and Rob Moore, focusing on their perspectives regarding sexual promiscuity, feminism, and the decline of traditional family structures. Pearl adopts an analytical stance, avoiding immediate moralizing, which sets her apart from many traditional commentators. Her reflective approach is evident in her attempt to understand Bonnie Blue's motivations and the evolution of Tate's worldview, rather than simply condemning or endorsing them. Pearl expresses a form of black-pilling, an acceptance of the collapse of traditional values, while seeking meaning within the emerging social reality. She emphasizes that her goal is not to save the world, but to understand how individuals might navigate a changing society. Her method is both introspective, referring to personal experiences such as demonetization or learning to play the piano, and observational, making her a unique voice in the ongoing debates about gender and society. Overview of the conversation between Tate Blue and Moore. The dialogue among Andrew Tate, Bonnie Blue, and Rob Moore centers on several key themes that reflect tensions within contemporary Western culture. 1. Sexual promiscuity and the monetization of the body. Bonnie Blue, an OnlyFans star and adult content creator, openly defends her lifestyle, in which she monetizes her sexuality, having slept with hundreds of men for profit. She presents this as an expression of freedom and independence, rejecting traditional norms of shame. 2. Critique of feminism and traditional gender roles. Tate articulates a vision in which feminism has dismantled the traditional family unit, stripping men of authority and women of responsibility. He argues that most Western women function as covert prostitutes, trading sex for resources in less explicit ways than Bonnie. 3. Individual autonomy versus societal good. Bonnie emphasizes individual autonomy and the right to live on one's own terms, whereas Tate, despite his declared acceptance of societal decline, expresses nostalgia for a patriarchal order in which men make decisions and women serve as mothers and wives. 4. Pragmatism and black pilling. Both Tate and Pearl at different points express resignation toward the idea of fixing society, suggesting that individuals should adapt to the new reality, enjoy the decline. Bonnie, by contrast, sees no need for change, as her lifestyle provides personal satisfaction. The discussion is chaotic, emotionally charged, and filled with provocative statements, yet it reveals deeper conflicts between individualism and community, biology and culture, freedom and responsibility. Rob Moore serves as a moderator, trying to balance Tate and Bonnie's perspectives, though his role is less dominant. The significance of Bonnie Blue and Andrew Tate. Bonnie Blue as a symbol of new femininity. Bonnie represents an extreme case of female emancipation in the context of liquid modernity. Her unapologetic promiscuity, lack of shame, and monetization of her body via platforms like OnlyFans are logical outcomes of the liberalization of sexual norms and the technological enablement of female sexual capital. Bonnie not only accepts her role, but celebrates it, rejecting moral judgment and traditional expectations of women, e.g. virginity, motherhood. In her vision, femininity becomes a tool of power that grants financial and personal freedom, contrasting with historical models of womanhood grounded in obedience and reproduction. Andrew Tate as a voice of reaction. Tate embodies a reactionary response to social changes he views as destructive to traditional order. His rhetoric draws on evolutionary psychology, suggesting that men are biologically driven to dominate and reproduce, while women should fulfill supportive roles. However, in this conversation, Tate reveals a paradox. While he critiques feminism and promiscuity, He also accepts the inevitability of women like Bonnie acting in accordance with new social dynamics. His black pilling reveals a resignation toward the loss of traditional values, in contrast to his previously more militant tone. Pearl as mediator and observer. Pearl acts as a bridge between extremes. She does not condemn Bonnie, but admires her consistency and courage in living by her own principles, reflecting existentialist ideas about freedom and responsibility. At the same time, she empathizes with Tate's frustration over the loss of male agency and traditional frameworks. Her reflections suggest an inquiry into how emerging forms of masculinity and femininity might coexist in a society moving away from established norms. Social and cultural context. The conversation takes place against the backdrop of contemporary Western society, where traditional social structures, e.g., the nuclear family, are eroding and individualism and consumerism have become dominant values. Platforms like OnlyFans, as cited by Bonnie, have enabled women to directly monetize their sexuality, shifting the power dynamics between the sexes. Concurrently, the rise of the manosphere and figures like Tate reflects a male backlash against these transformations, often articulated through frustration or nihilism, i.e. blackpilling. Pearl, analyzing these phenomena, raises a central question. Can a society function without shared norms if individuals are guided solely by personal desires? Her approach implies that rather than lamenting the collapse of tradition, we should explore new modes of adaptation, opening the path for further inquiry into the consequences of these emergent ideologies and lifestyles. Perspectives and values of key figures. Bonnie Blue, autonomy, monetization, and the rejection of traditional norms. Her core values. Bonnie Blue, a prominent figure on OnlyFans and in the adult industry, embodies a worldview grounded in 4 pillars: individual freedom, financial independence, shamelessness, and pragmatism. In the podcast, she emphasizes that she lives on her own terms, monetizing her sexuality through conscious decisions such as engaging in sexual relations with hundreds of men as part of her work. Rather than deflecting criticism, she openly embraces labels like prostitute or whore, transforming them into sources of identity and empowerment. She states, "Call me whatever you want, I live by my own rules," signaling a rejection of traditional social norms that impose shame on female promiscuity. Her financial independence. "I'm my own bank, I don't need a man," stands as proof of her success in a world where women have historically depended on men. Bonnie's pragmatism manifests in her acceptance of market realities. She views her work as a form of social service, e.g., sex workers help reduce rape rates by over 30%, satisfying male demand while granting her control over her own life. Psychological foundations. From a psychological perspective, Bonnie's stance reflects the individualism and hedonism characteristic of Western culture, Twenge, 2014. Her position can be analyzed through the lens of self-determination theory, Deci and Ryan, 2000, which highlights the importance of autonomy and competence for psychological well-being. Bonnie derives satisfaction from her control over her body and finances, which grants her a sense of agency. At the same time, her refusal to feel shame indicates a deliberate opposition to collectivist expectations, e.g., motherhood monogamy. However, from the standpoint of evolutionary psychology, Buss, 2016, her strategy appears paradoxical. Whereas women have evolved to secure resources and protection through long-term pair bonding, Bonnie reverses this model by leveraging sexuality for short-term benefits, potentially at the cost of long-term emotional stability, e.g., social isolation, difficulty forming enduring bonds. Anthropological and sociological background. Anthropologically, Bonnie's posture aligns with historical patterns of prostitution as the oldest profession in the world, but gains new dimensions in the digital age through platforms like OnlyFans. Levi Strauss, 1949, likened women and their role to valuable goods in a system of reciprocal exchange where their sexuality and reproductive capacity were regulated to forge intergroup bonds. Women's value was a symbolic currency in social exchange where their sexuality was regulated by men to forge alliances. From this perspective, Bonnie seems to reclaim her sexual value, transforming it into economic and social capital for herself. Sociologically, Her approach is a product of liquid modernity Bauman 2000, where traditional institutions, e.g. family church, lose their influence and individuals pursue self-realization through consumption. Bonnie represents an extreme instance of sexual capitalism, where the body becomes a commodity on the open market, thereby undermining traditional kinship structures and gender roles. Andrew Tate, Biological Determinism and Nostalgia for Patriarchy. His core values. Andrew Tate articulates a worldview rooted in biological determinism, male dominance, and nostalgia for a patriarchal order. He argues that men have an evolutionary imperative to impregnate multiple women and protect them, while women should seek a single high-value man who provides security. He criticizes feminism for dismantling the traditional family, claiming that women who make their own decisions make stupid decisions. At the same time, Tate expresses a nihilistic acceptance of contemporary social chaos, a form of black pilling, stating, "I've given up on trying to save the world." His worldview combines a belief in male superiority with a pragmatic acknowledgement that traditional values are irretrievable in the current reality. He views Bonnie as both a symbol of societal collapse and a logical consequence of feminism, which he supports in a deliberately ironic manner. "I'm a feminist, I support Bonnie." Psychological foundations. Psychologically, Tate draws on masculine archetypes that emphasize dominance, strength, and control. His rhetoric reflects the male need for status assertion within social hierarchies, consistent with Triver's 1972 theory of sexual selection and intersexual competition. His black pilling can be interpreted as a form of Nietzschean nihilism, stemming from the perceived impossibility of restoring order amid cultural entropy. Tate also expresses frustration with men whom he labels beta males, accusing them of enabling feminism in the hope of sexual rewards. His internal conflict is evident. While he longs for patriarchal control, he also accepts the new sexual economy in which women like Bonnie thrive. Ethological and sociological background. From an ethological perspective, Tate invokes animal models wherein the alpha male dominates and mates with multiple females, e.g. comparison to a big gorilla. Yet, in human societies, this model oversimplifies gender dynamics by ignoring technological and cultural shifts, e.g., social media, feminism, that have transformed power relations. Sociologically, Tate represents a reaction to Anime Durkheim, 1897, a state of normlessness in which traditional gender roles have been blurred. His ironic endorsement of Bonnie underscores his recognition that the current system rewards individuals who operate pragmatically within the new rules of the game, such as monetizing sexuality. Rather than advocating for a return to the past, Tate embodies the resigned consciousness of a man who sees no viable path back to patriarchal structure and instead adapts cynically to the present order. Pearl, reflection, and the search for meaning amid chaos. Her core values presented here. Pearl assumes the role of a mediator whose values include reflectiveness, acceptance of reality, and the pursuit of meaning. She does not condemn Bonnie, but rather admires her authenticity and courage in living by her own rules. "I admire the fact that she lives unapologetically." At the same time, she understands Tate's frustration over the collapse of traditional structures, yet rejects moralizing, stating, "I don't have time for moral outrage." Her version of the black pill, "Life begins when you accept the collapse," is more constructive than Tate's, as it combines acceptance of reality with an effort to create personal meaning, e.g., by learning piano or helping others. Pearl emphasizes the individual's right to make mistakes, which echoes existentialist philosophy and its emphasis on freedom of choice and personal responsibility. Psychological foundations. Psychologically, Pearl demonstrates high self-awareness and introspective capacity, allowing her to avoid the polarization typical of gender debates. Her approach aligns with Viktor Frankl's theory of meaning-making in the face of chaos. Pearl does not attempt to impose solutions, but encourages adaptation to new realities, an indication of emotional maturity and cognitive flexibility. Her rejection of moralization. suggests that she views society as a system in which individuals must forge their own paths, contrasting with the dogmatism of both traditionalists and feminists. Her stance represents a form of pragmatic realism rooted in individual psychological resilience rather than ideological allegiance. Philosophical and sociological background. Philosophically, Pearl belongs to the existentialist tradition, wherein the individual defines themselves through choices made in an absurd, disordered world. Her black pill is not pure nihilism, but rather a form of resonance, Rosa, 2019, where accepting chaos becomes the foundation for constructing personal meaning. Sociologically, her attitude reflects fatigue with social polarization, Putnam, 2000, and a search for balance between individualism and community. Pearl critiques both traditionalists who seek to impose control and feminists who dismiss responsibility, instead proposing a pragmatic approach to life in a world that has lost normative cohesion. Synthesis. Bonnie Blue represents radical individualism and the commodification of sexuality, logical consequences of liquid modernity, but her path risks alienation and the erosion of social bonds. Andrew Tate expresses nostalgia for a patriarchal order grounded in biological determinism, but his black pilling reflects a surrender to contemporary chaos, making him a paradoxical ally to Bonnie. Pearl, as a mediator, offers a reflective perspective that combines acceptance of reality with a search for meaning while avoiding dogmatic frameworks. Their perspectives reveal the underlying tension between individual freedom and the human need for social cohesion, an axis that will serve as the foundation for analyzing systemic consequences in the following section. Systemic consequences of adopted attitudes. The attitudes of Bonnie Blue, Andrew Tate, and Pearl, as articulated in the podcast transcript, carry far-reaching implications for both individuals and society. Below, I analyze these consequences on two levels: individual, psychological and emotional effects for women and men, and social, impact on family structure, demographics, and cultural norms. The analysis draws upon theoretical frameworks from psychology, e.g., Twenge, Frankel, sociology, e.g., Durkheim, Putnam, anthropology, e.g., Levi-Strauss, and ethology, e.g., Buss-Trivers, with references to the transcript. Consequences for the individual. Women, Bonnie Blue's autonomy, and the long-term emotional costs. Bonnie Blue's stance, based on the monetization of sexuality, autonomy, and the rejection of traditional norms, has both positive and potentially negative consequences for women. Positive aspects. Bonnie emphasizes her financial independence and freedom. "I'm my own bank, I don't need a man," which grants her a sense of agency and life control. From the perspective of self-determination theory, Deci and Ryan, 2000, autonomy and competence are key to psychological well-being. Her shamelessness and open acceptance of her role, "Call me whatever you want, I live by my own rules," may be liberating for women constrained by societal expectations around virginity or motherhood. Bonnie represents a model of femininity that utilizes technology, e.g. OnlyFans, to transform sexuality into capital, which aligns with Zygmunt Bauman's concept of liquid modernity, 2000, where identity is constructed through consumption and self-actualization. Negative aspects. Psychologically, the long-term consequences of such a lifestyle may include emotional alienation and difficulty in forming lasting relationships. Evolutionary psychology, Buss, 2016, suggests that women who engage in short-term sexual strategies may face social rejection, particularly in environments where traditional norms still hold sway. Although Bonnie claims to be happy and fulfilled, the transcript does not address potential emotional costs such as lack of intimate bonds or stigmatization outside her professional niche. Moreover, her lifestyle model may exert pressure on other women to similarly monetize their bodies, reinforcing the internalized belief that a woman's value lies in her sexuality. Twenge, 2014. Anthropological background. Anthropologically, Bonnie reverses traditional exchange structures in which women were commodities controlled by men, Levi-Strauss, 1969, yet her strategy may produce a paradox. Although she gains independence, she also reinforces the perception of women as sexual objects, which may limit their roles in other spheres, e.g. politics, science. Men Tate's pragmatism and the redefinition of masculinity. Andrew Tate's stance, rooted in biological determinism and acceptance of the fall of traditional values, shapes men's approach to relationships and responsibility. Positive aspects. Tate encourages men to accept reality. Life begins when you accept the fall, and focus on self-improvement, e.g., look in the mirror, you're fat, do something about it. His rhetoric, while controversial, may motivate men to reclaim control over their lives in a world where traditional male roles, e.g., provider, are losing relevance. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, Trivers, 1972, Tate promotes male competitiveness and dominance, which can provide a sense of purpose in an environment where many men feel disoriented by social changes, e.g., feminism, gender equality. His distinction between wives and hoes allows men to approach relationships pragmatically, separating pleasure from emotional commitment. Negative aspects. Tate's vision of masculinity, centered on hypersexuality and rejection of emotional intimacy, can lead to cynicism and isolation. His claim that men who accept women with a past are gay reinforces toxic masculinity standards that penalize empathy and acceptance. Psychologically, such an approach may lead to lower emotional well-being, as men who internalize this rhetoric may avoid deeper relationships out of fear of sloppy seconds. Additionally, Tate's conditional acceptance of female promiscuity, e.g. Bonnie, in specific contexts, men love hoes but in the right place, may normalize the objectification of women, undermining the possibility of mutual respect in relationships. Ethological background. Ethologically, Tate invokes the alpha male model aimed at maximizing reproduction, Buss, 2016. However, in a modern context where reproduction is no longer the dominant priority, his approach may result in a conflict between biological drives and social realities, where women have greater autonomy and access to resources. Pearl, balance between acceptance and reflection. As a commentator, Pearl offers a unique perspective that combines acceptance of reality with reflection on its consequences. Her attitude, "I don't have time for moral outrage," helps her avoid the trap of dogmatism, giving her flexibility in dealing with the chaos of the contemporary world. Psychologically, her stance aligns with Viktor Frankl's theory of finding meaning in the face of existential crisis. By focusing on self-improvement, e.g., learning to play piano, Pearl demonstrates how individuals can create meaningful lives despite social decline. However, her blackpilling may also lead to disengagement from collective action, thereby limiting her influence on broader social change. Consequences for society. Erosion of the traditional family. The attitudes of Bonnie and Tate contribute to the erosion of the traditional family, which has profound social consequences. Bonnie rejects the roles of mother and wife, choosing individual freedom and sexual monetization, consistent with trends described by Jack Goody, 1983, regarding the dissolution of kinship structures in Western societies. Tate, while nostalgic for patriarchy, accepts family decline, stating, "Women don't want to be wives, they just want to get married." As a result, the traditional family unit, based on mutual obligations and reproduction, is replaced by individualistic relationship models where sex becomes a transaction, e.g. Bonnie as service provider. Sociologically, this erosion leads to an increased role of the state as a substitute for family, which Tate criticizes. The government has to raise children because men have lost power. Western countries are witnessing a rise in single-mother households and children raised on welfare, e.g., in the UK, 44% of children in single-parent families live in poverty, UK Office for National Statistics, 2023. This increases pressure on social systems and leads to anomie, a breakdown of cohesive social norms. Demographic changes. Tate emphasizes the issue of declining fertility in the West. White women are too busy sucking dick in Magaluf, which necessitates the import of labor. Demographic data confirm this trend. In EU countries, the fertility rate averages 1.5 children per woman, Eurostat 2023, below the replacement threshold of 2.1. Bonnie's rejection of motherhood in favor of freedom and Tate's promotion of reproduction without responsibility, "I have 50 kids, 5 will survive," exacerbate this crisis. In the long term, This may lead to changes in the ethnic and cultural makeup of the West, a shift Tate ironically refers to as the fall. Cultural shift from sacrum to profanum. Culturally, Bonnie's and Tate's attitudes reflect a shift from the sacred, e.g. marriage as a holy institution, to the profane, sex as commodity. Bonnie normalizes prostitution as a social service, challenging traditional moral and religious values. Despite criticizing feminism, Tate accepts this reality as the inevitable outcome of liberalization. Sociologically, this represents a transition from communitarianism to individualism, Putnam, 2000, leading to social atomization, where human bonds are replaced by economic transactions. Pearl observes that people in isolated communities, e.g. farmers, seem more mentally clear, suggesting that urbanization and social media reinforce this process by promoting competition and consumption. Synthesis. On the individual level, Bonnie's stance offers women short-term autonomy, but may lead to emotional alienation and social stigmatization. Tate's vision of masculinity motivates men toward self-improvement, but fosters cynicism and objectification of women, making stable relationships harder to achieve. On the societal level, their positions contribute to family erosion, declining birth rates, and a cultural shift toward individualism, increasing dependency on the state, and leading to anomie. Pearl, through her reflective stance, points to the possibility of reconciling with these changes through personal development, but her black-pilled outlook may limit the potential for collective solutions. These consequences form the foundation for the analysis of future models of intergender relationships in the next section. The future of intersexual relations. The attitudes expressed by Bonnie Blue, Andrew Tate, and Pearl in the podcast transcript reflect tensions between individualism and communality, freedom and responsibility, as well as biology and culture. Below, I analyze which attitudes among women represented by Bonnie may become dominant, how men are likely to adapt to the emerging reality, and what possible scenarios might shape intersexual relations in Western societies. This analysis draws on theoretical frameworks from psychology, e.g. Twenge-Buss, sociology, e.g. Durkheim-Bauman, anthropology, e.g. Levi-Strauss, ethology, e.g. Trivers, and philosophy, e.g. Rosa Nietzsche. Dominant female attitudes, represented by Bonnie Blue. Bonnie Blue's stance, based on autonomy, monetization of sexuality, and rejection of traditional norms, is a logical outcome of liquid modernity, Bauman, 2000, and may become increasingly widespread among women in Western society, particularly in the context of technological mediation and liberalization of norms. The spread of sexual capitalism. Bonnie represents a model in which women utilize their sexuality as an economic tool, for example, through platforms like OnlyFans. I am my own bank. Data shows that OnlyFans generated $6.6 billion in revenue in 2023, most of which came from female creators of erotic content, Statista, 2024. The increased accessibility of such platforms may incentivize women to treat sexuality as a source of income, particularly in the context of economic uncertainty. Anthropologically, this trend reverses historical structures where men controlled female sexuality, Levi-Strauss, 1969, yet it reinforces the perception of women as consumable objects, something Bonnie openly embraces. Call me what you want, I live by my own rules. Rejection of traditional roles. Bonnie rejects the roles of mother and wife, aligning with broader social trends. In the U.S., the percentage of women aged 30 to 34 without children rose from 26% in 2000 to 33% in 2020 U.S. Census Bureau 2023. Increasingly, women prioritize career, freedom, and self-actualization over traditional expectations, a shift reinforced by social media that valorizes individualism, Twenge, 2014. However, as Pearl notes, such choices may lead to loneliness in a crowd, indicating the potential emotional costs of this freedom. Normalization of unashamed promiscuity. Bonnie celebrates her promiscuity as a form of freedom, which could contribute to further destigmatization of female sexuality. From a sociological perspective, Durkheim, 1897, described anomie as a state of normlessness that leads to social disintegration. If Bonnie's attitude becomes dominant, norms surrounding monogamy and fidelity may become fully dissolved, transforming the structural foundation of interpersonal relationships. Psychological and ethological constraints. Psychologically, Bonnie's stance reflects hedonism and the need for autonomy. Deci and Ryan, 2000, but from an ethological perspective, Buss, 2016, it may be difficult to sustain in the long term. Evolutionarily, women seek resource security for offspring, and Bonnie's short-term strategy may result in a conflict between biological imperatives and cultural choices. Men's adaptation to the new reality. Faced with the changes represented by Bonnie and criticized by Tate, men will need to adapt to the new dynamics of gender. Tate's vision, men love hoes, but in the right context, suggests a pragmatic approach, but its long-term consequences are complex. Pragmatic approaches to relationships. Tate encourages men to accept reality by separating wives from hoes, which may lead to an increase in transactional relationships, e.g. sex for money, support for loyalty. Sociologically, this mirrors the transactionality described by Luhmann, 1984, in social systems, where relationships lose emotional depth in favor of functional logic. Men may increasingly avoid emotional investment, a move Tate endorses. Don't date women with a past, yet this may result in cynicism and emotional isolation. Redefinition of masculinity. Tate promotes the alpha male model, but in a world where women gain increasing autonomy, men will need to redefine masculinity. Psychologically, men may find meaning in self-improvement, as Pearl suggests. Look in the mirror. You're fat. Do something about it. Echoing Frankl's 1946 theory of meaning-seeking. However, from an ethological standpoint, male competition for status, Trivers, 1972, may intensify, especially under economic inequality, where high-value men, as defined by Tate, are increasingly preferred by women. Withdrawal from traditional expectations. Tate's black-pilled rhetoric, "I gave up on saving the world," suggests that men may abandon traditional roles, e.g. provider, father, in favor of individualistic strategies. In the U.S., the percentage of men aged 25 to 34 living with their parents rose from 12% in 2000 to 17% in 2020, Pew Research, 2023, possibly reflecting a retreat from conventional responsibilities. Yet, as Pearl notes, such withdrawal may lead to a state of mental fog, indicating the need for new forms of male identity. Possible scenarios for intergender relations. The future of intergender relations in Western society will largely depend on how society responds to the tensions between individualism and the need for community. Below, I present 3 possible scenarios inspired by the attitudes of Bonnie, Tate, and Pearl. 1. Continued gender polarization, manosphere versus feminism. Description. The positions of Bonnie, female autonomy, and Tate, male dominance, may drive a deepening polarization where men and women increasingly perceive each other as adversaries. The manosphere, represented by Tate, and feminism, criticized by Tate, but indirectly endorsed by Bonnie, could escalate the conflict, reinforcing mutual distrust. Tate predicts that men will reject women with a past, while women like Bonnie demand acceptance of their choices. Consequences. Sociologically, such polarization erodes social capital, leading to atomization and loneliness. Psychologically, both sexes may experience rising frustration and nihilism, which Pearl refers to as the mental fog. A probability. High, given current trends in social media, which reinforce echo chambers and gender antagonisms. 2. Emergence of new relationship models, e.g. polyamory, transactional contracts. Description. In response to the collapse of traditional norms, intergender relations may evolve toward new models such as polyamory, open relationships, or explicitly transactional contracts. Bonnie already embodies the transactional model. Sex workers help reduce rape rates, while Tate promotes a pragmatic approach to one-night relationships. Pearl suggests that individuals must live by their own rules, which open space for experimentation with alternative forms of bonding. Consequences. Anthropologically, these models depart from traditional kinship structures, Goody, 1983, potentially contributing to further fertility decline, Eurostat, 2023, 1.5 children per woman in the EU. Sociologically, They may increase social flexibility, but also raise the risk of emotional instability, especially for children raised in non-traditional arrangements. A probability moderate. These new relationship forms are gaining traction, e.g., 10% of Americans aged 18 to 34 express interest in polyamory. Gallup, 2023, but still face resistance from traditional norms. 3. Renewal of traditional values in response to chaos. Description: in response to anime, Durkheim, 1897, and social disintegration, some groups may attempt to restore traditional values, such as monogamy, the nuclear family, or local communities, as seen among the Amish referenced by Pearl. Tate expresses nostalgia for patriarchy, women make stupid decisions, although his black pilling reveals a lack of belief in any return to the past. Nevertheless, social crises, e.g., falling birth rates, loneliness, may motivate parts of society to seek stability in traditional structures. Consequences: philosophically, such a return would constitute a form of resonance, Rosa, 2019, where individuals rediscover meaning through community. Sociologically, it may lead to the emergence of value enclaves, e.g., religious communities, that coexist with dominant individualism. From an ethological perspective, traditional roles may better correspond to evolved gender preferences, Buss, 2016, but their restoration would require profound cultural transformation. A probability: low in the short term, but plausible in the long term, especially as a reaction to demographic or economic crises. Synthesis: Bonnie Blue's stance, based on autonomy and the monetization of sexuality, may become increasingly common among women, particularly in the context of technology and individualism. However, this comes with the risk of emotional alienation and the continued erosion of normative structures. Men, inspired by Tate's pragmatism, may redefine masculinity through self-improvement and transactional relations, though this path carries the danger of cynicism and gender polarization. Pearl calls for reflection and adaptation, potentially inspiring individuals to search for meaning amid chaos. The future of intergender relations will most likely trend toward polarization and the proliferation of new bonding models. However, societal response to chaos may also include the revival of traditional values within smaller, intentional communities. These scenarios will serve as the foundation for the analysis of broader worldviews in the following section. Synthesis: what kind of world emerges from this vision? The conversation between Bonnie Blue, Andrew Tate, and Rob Moore, analyzed by Pearl in the podcast transcript, reveals deep tensions in contemporary Western society, mirroring the conflict between individualism and community, freedom and responsibility, as well as biology and culture. Below is a synthesis of the worldview emerging from their attitudes, addressing key questions and analyzing the driving forces of change and their potential consequences. This synthesis draws on earlier sections and theoretical frameworks, e.g., Bauman, Durkheim, Buss, Frankel. Is Bonnie Blue's stance an inevitable consequence of liquid modernity? Bonnie Blue's stance, based on autonomy, the monetization of sexuality, and rejection of traditional norms, I live by my own rules, I'm my own bank, is a logically consistent and nearly inevitable product of liquid modernity as described by Zygmunt Bauman, 2000. In a world where traditional institutions, family, religion, community, have lost authority, individuals are driven by individualism and consumption. Technologies like OnlyFans enable women to exert direct control over their sexuality as an economic asset. Data confirms this trend. In 2023, OnlyFans generated $6.6 billion in revenue, mostly from creators of erotic content. Statista, 2024, indicating the scale of what can be called sexual capitalism. Anthropologically, Bonnie inverts historical kinship structures in which women functioned as currency in male-dominated exchanges. Levi Strauss, 1969, transforming her sexuality into personal capital. Sociologically, her posture reflects a state of anime. Durkheim, 1897, a normless environment that normalizes promiscuity without shame. However, the inevitability of this stance does not mean it is universal. Pearl notes that individuals in isolated communities, e.g. farmers, retain mental clarity, 59:26, 59:33, implying that liquid modernity has not yet engulfed all social strata. Psychologically, Bonnie's outlook satisfies the needs for autonomy and competence, Deci and Ryan 2000, but may lead to a deficit in emotional connection, raising questions about long-term satisfaction. Bonnie claims to be happy and fulfilled, but the transcript offers no insight into her personal relationships, leaving open the question of emotional costs such as alienation, a condition described by Twenge, 2014, in the context of hyperindividualism. Conclusion: Bonnie's attitude is a near-inevitable consequence of urbanized and media-saturated liquid modernity, but its generalization depends on further technological expansion and erosion of norms. Alternative communal models may limit its reach. Does the blackpilling of Tate and Pearl reflect a realistic acceptance of civilizational decline or a surrender of moral struggle? The blackpilling of Andrew Tate, "I've given up trying to save the world. Life begins when you accept the collapse," and Pearl reflects both a realistic recognition of the collapse of traditional structures and, in varying degrees, a withdrawal from a struggle for communal values. Tate, nihilism and the will to power. Tate's vision, grounded in biological determinism, "I have 50 kids, 5 will survive," fuses nihilism with a will to power. He critiques feminism for dismantling the family, the government must raise the kids, and expresses nostalgia for patriarchy. Yet his tacit endorsement of Bonnie's sexual liberty, "I'm a feminist, I support Bonnie," suggests a resignation to modern decay. His blackpilling is more cynical than constructive, promoting a pragmatic approach to relationships. Men love hoes, but in the right place rather than a fight for collective values. Ethologically, he appeals to the alpha male model, Buss 2016, but disregards the complexity of contemporary social systems, reducing human interaction to status competition. Pearl, reflection and the search for meaning. Pearl also accepts collapse. Life begins when you accept the fall, but her version of blackpilling is more constructive, aligning with Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. Through introspection, e.g., learning piano and helping others, Pearl seeks resonance in chaos, avoiding moralizing. "I don't have time for moral outrage." Her stance represents an attempt to adapt through personal development and micro-level community acts. Sociologically, she resists atomization, suggesting that local ties may counteract anime. Comparison. Tate's nihilism leans toward resignation, as his worldview is limited to individual domination and neglects systemic solutions. Pearl, in contrast, combines realism with the search for meaning, offering a framework more resilient to existential emptiness. Both acknowledge the erosion of norms, but Pearl proposes adaptation, while Tate halts at critique. Conclusion. Tate's blackpilling primarily signifies abandonment of communal values in favor of individual strategy. Pearl, by contrast, realistically accepts collapse while seeking meaning within it, offering a path for constructive responses to civilizational crisis. What forces drive these changes, and what might their long-term effects be? Driving forces of change. 1. Technology. Platforms like OnlyFans enable women such as Bonnie to monetize their sexuality, fundamentally altering gender dynamics. Social media amplify individualism and polarization by creating echo chambers where figures like Tate gain popularity, while Pearl examines the ensuing chaos. Technology accelerates liquid modernity, eroding traditional norms and destabilizing established social orders. 2. Capitalism. The market rewards attitudes exemplified by Bonnie, who commodifies sexuality. Capitalism promotes consumption and self-realization, which undermine communal values, as Pearl observes. Tate critiques this system, but simultaneously exploits capitalist mechanisms such as personal brand building. 3. Feminism and norm liberalization. Feminism, criticized by Tate, has empowered women's autonomy, which Bonnie openly celebrates. The liberalization of sexual norms leads to anime, normalizing promiscuity and undermining the traditional family structure, which Tate frames as decline. 4. Demographic and cultural crisis. Declining fertility rates, 1.5 children per woman in the EU, Eurostat 2023, and family erosion, Goody 1983, fuel reactions such as Tate's nostalgia and Bonnie's freedom. Pearl points to the mental fog affecting contemporary individuals, reflecting a broader crisis of meaning. Long-term effects. 1. Erosion of social structures. The attitudes of Bonnie and Tate contribute to further erosion of family and community bonds, increasing dependency on the state. See Tate. Anthropologically, traditional kinship structures, Levi Strauss, 1969, may be replaced by transactional relationships, Luhmann, 1984, a dynamic Bonnie already exemplifies. 2. Gender polarization. Tate's criticism of women and Bonnie's autonomy may exacerbate gender conflict, Trivers, 1972, fueling the growth of the manosphere and feminism alike. Psychologically, this polarization increases loneliness and nihilism, Nietzsche, 1887, which Pearl attempts to counteract. 3. Demographic shifts. Fertility decline and the rejection of motherhood by women like Bonnie may lead to aging populations and increased reliance on labor immigration, altering Western cultural structures. 4. New forms of social bonds. Pearl suggests the possibility of new communities, which may result in experiments with polyamory or local value enclaves akin to Amish communities. Philosophically, such models could offer resonance, Rosa, 2019, but require a move away from the individualism espoused by Bonnie and Tate. 5. Crisis of meaning. Without addressing anomie, Durkheim, 1897, society risks drifting into nihilism as Tate predicts. Pearl offers an alternative through the search for meaning, Frankel, 1946, though her influence remains limited in a media-saturated world. As we can see, the world emerging from the visions of Bonnie, Tate, and Pearl is one of liquid modernity, where individualism, technology, and capitalism drive the erosion of traditional social structures, leading to anomie, gender polarization, and demographic crises. Bonnie's stance is an almost inevitable outcome of these forces, yet its long-term emotional and social costs remain uncertain. Tate's black-pilling reflects nihilistic resignation, while Pearl combines acceptance of collapse with a search for meaning, offering a more constructive approach. Over time, society may trend toward transactional relations and atomization, but potential exists for new forms of social bonds if individuals, as Pearl suggests, find resonance amid chaos. The driving forces, technology, capitalism, feminism, are powerful, but their outcomes will depend on whether society chooses adaptation or further polarization. Future scenarios of social processes in the West. Below are 2 realistic scenarios describing the evolution of social relations related to sexuality, family, the role of the state, emancipation, and loneliness in Western societies. These scenarios incorporate current trends, e.g., declining fertility, rising individualism, technological development, historical dynamics of social systems, e.g., erosion of kinship structures, urbanization, and driving forces of change, technology, capitalism, feminism. Each scenario includes a description, justification, likely consequences, and references to relevant data and theories. Scenario 1. Transactional atomization. The dominance of individualism and the state. Description. In this scenario, Western societies continue to fragment into increasingly atomized units, where sexual and familial relationships become highly transactional and instrumental, based primarily on short-term exchanges of resources, e.g. sex for money, support for loyalty. The traditional nuclear family diminishes in significance, with the state assuming a central role in child-rearing and financing. Both female and male emancipation reach high levels of autonomy, but at the cost of increased loneliness and emotional alienation. Technologies such as OnlyFans and dating apps, combined with capitalist imperatives, amplify individualism, while gender polarization, e.g. the manosphere versus feminism, hinders the formation of stable bonds. Sexuality becomes fully commodified, normalizing models like Bonnie Blues, I Am My Own Bank. Both women and men increasingly engage in short-term, transactional sexual relationships facilitated by digital platforms. Prostitution and online erotic content become prevalent income sources, especially among young women, e.g., in 2023, 2% of U.S. women aged 18 to 24 maintained OnlyFans accounts. Statista, 2024. Family. The nuclear family is replaced by single-person households and non-traditional arrangements such as polyamory and single parenthood. In the U.S., 28% of households were single-person in 2020 compared to 13% in 1960, U.S. Census Bureau, 2023. Children are increasingly raised by single parents or institutional care. Role of the state. The state assumes responsibility for child-rearing and funding through universal daycare, single-parent benefits, and public education. In the UK, 44% of children in single-parent families live in poverty, necessitating social intervention. UK Office for National Statistics, 2023. Tate criticizes this trend. The government has to take care of the kids, yet it remains inevitable in this scenario. Emancipation. Women achieve full economic and social autonomy, as Bonnie exemplifies, while men redefine masculinity, moving away from traditional breadwinner roles, as Tate suggests. However, this emancipation correlates with increasing loneliness. In the U.S., 60% of adults aged 18 to 34 report feeling lonely at least weekly, Gallup, 2023. Loneliness, atomization, and the absence of enduring social bonds heighten emotional isolation. Pearl identifies a mental fog in contemporary people, reflecting the existential crisis of meaning described by Frankl, 1946. Justification. This scenario is plausible given present trends and historical dynamics. Social trends. Declining fertility rates, 1.5 children per woman in the EU, Eurostat 2023, rising numbers of single-person households, and the popularity of dating apps. Tinder had 70 million users in 2023, Statista 2024, indicate the individualization of relationships. The growth of OnlyFans and similar platforms exemplifies the commercialization of sexuality. Historical dynamics. Goody, 1983, documents the historical shift from extended to nuclear families and subsequently to individualism, propelled by urbanization and capitalism. Anime, Durkheim, 1897, arising from the erosion of normative frameworks, fosters normalization of transactional relationships akin to Bonnie's. Driving forces. Technology, social media, digital platforms, intensifies individualism and gender polarization, consistent with Bauman's analysis of liquid modernity, 2000. Capitalism rewards autonomy, but undermines social cohesion, Putnam, 2000. Feminism, while empowering women criticized by Tate, combined with consumerism, leads to alienation. Psychological and ethological foundations. Buss, 2016, notes that short-term sexual strategies, as in Bonnie's case, emerge in resource-rich environments. Meanwhile, sexual conflict theory, Trivers, 1972, predicts intensified gender polarization, a point Tate emphasizes. Lack of stable bonds precipitates a crisis of meaning, Frankl, 1946. Consequences. Social. The erosion of the family increases state burdens, potentially precipitating fiscal crises, e.g., Japan's social welfare spending was 22% of GDP in 2022, OECD 2023. Declining social capital, Putnam, 2000, weakens trust and cooperation. Demographic. Low fertility necessitates labor importation, altering the ethnic and cultural composition of Western societies, as Tate notes, 33:32, 33:45. Psychological, increasing loneliness and depression, e.g., 25% of young adults in the U.S. report depressive symptoms, CDC, 2023, generate a public mental health crisis. Cultural, sexuality becomes profaned, losing its sacred dimension, thereby reinforcing nihilistic tendencies, Nietzsche, 1887. Probability, high, 70 to 80%, due to direct extrapolation from current trajectories, especially in highly urbanized countries, e.g. U.S., Western Europe. Resistance from traditional communities may moderate its universality. Scenario 2. Hybrid adaptation. Coexistence of individualism and communal enclaves. Description. In this scenario, Western societies develop a hybrid model where individualism and transactional relationships, as exemplified by Bonnie, coexist alongside a resurgence of communal enclaves grounded in traditional or novel values, as Pearl suggests. The family remains in crisis, but certain groups rebuild durable social bonds through religious communities, local cooperatives, or alternative family models. The state continues to play a role in child-rearing, but with reduced involvement within these enclaves. Emancipation of both women and men is widespread. Yet communities provide a counterbalance to loneliness, creating spaces for resonance. Rosa, 2019. Sexuality. Sexuality remains diverse. Transactional models dominate urban settings, e.g. OnlyFans dating apps, whereas communal enclaves, religious or rural, promote monogamy or controlled permissiveness. Pearl highlights mental clarity among farmers, suggesting an alternative to commercialization. A family. The nuclear family is rare, but new forms emerge, such as multigenerational communities, polyamory, or cooperative families. In the U.S., 10% of adults aged 18 to 34 express interest in polyamory, Gallup, 2023, and Amish communities grow by about 3% annually, Amish Studies, 2023. Role of the state. The state finances child-rearing in cities, but cedes partial responsibility to communities through private schools or localized care systems. In Sweden, 30% of children attend private educational institutions, OECD, 2023. Emancipation. Both genders retain autonomy, but communal enclaves may uphold more traditional gender roles, implicitly supported by Pearl. Men redefine masculinity through communal activities rather than mere competition, as Tate suggests. A loneliness. Loneliness persists in urban centers, but enclaves provide social bonds that reduce alienation. In the UK, religious communities report 20% lower loneliness levels compared to the general population. British Social Attitudes, 2023. Justification. This scenario is plausible due to societal responses to crises and historical precedents. Social trends. Growing interest in alternative lifestyles, minimalism, ecological communities, and religious revival among certain groups. 15% of young adults in the U.S. report renewed religiosity. Pew Research 2023 indicate a search for community. Declining fertility and family erosion. Eurostat 2023 compel experimentation with new social models. Historical dynamics. Levi Strauss, 1969, describes how social crises catalyze new kinship structures. In the Middle Ages, monasteries and guilds offered alternative bonds amid chaos. Contemporary enclaves, Amish kibbutzim, demonstrate community survival within individualistic societies. Driving forces. The existential crisis, Frankel, 1946, and loneliness epidemic, Gallup, 2023, push individuals toward community, as Pearl suggests. Technology enables virtual communities that can translate into physical ones. Capitalism supports individualism, but also creates niche markets for communal goods, e.g., eco-products. Psychological and ethological foundations. Rosa, 2019, conceptualizes resonance as a remedy for alienation, encouraging enclave growth. From an ethological perspective, humans evolved toward cooperation, Trivers, 1971, potentially counteracting atomization within smaller groups. Consequences. Social. The coexistence of individualism and communalism produces a heterogeneous society, but may deepen inequalities between urban centers and enclaves. Social capital, Putnam, 2000, increases in communities but declines in cities. Demographic. Enclaves may boost fertility, Amish average 6 children per family, Amish Studies 2023, but will not reverse the overall aging trend in Western populations. Psychological. Communities alleviate loneliness and enhance well-being, Frankel, 1946, though urban dwellers remain vulnerable to alienation. Cultural. Parallel cultures emerge. Individualistic urban and communal enclave cultures, which may generate tensions but also mutual enrichment. Probability. Moderate, 50 to 60%, as this scenario requires active social responses to crises, which are possible but not ubiquitous. Historical precedents and current trends support its plausibility, especially in countries with strong communal traditions, e.g. Scandinavia, USA. As we see, both scenarios reflect the tension between individualism and communalism shaping contemporary Western societies. Scenario 1, transactional atomization, is more likely in the short term, as it directly extrapolates from existing trends: OnlyFans, declining fertility, loneliness. It strengthens emancipation, but at the cost of alienation and dependence on the state, leading to Anime, Durkheim, 1897. Scenario 2, hybrid adaptation, is less probable but possible in the long term, particularly as a response to crises of meaning and loneliness. It offers a balance between emancipation and social bonds, supporting resonance. Rosa, 2019. Both suggest the future depends on how societies navigate technology, capitalism, and norm erosion, choosing transactional relationships like Bonnie and Tate or communalism as Pearl advocates. Pearl's reflection and its significance. Pearl, as a commentator in the Discuss podcast, occupies a unique position in the discourse on gender relations and social change. Her reflective stance, avoidance of moralizing, and adoption of the black pill perspective, life begins when you accept the fall, distinguish her from traditional commentators, offering a novel form of analysis of contemporary social chaos. Below, I analyze the significance of her approach by addressing key questions and integrating earlier conclusions. Why does Pearl avoid moralizing? Pearl consciously rejects moralizing, stating, "I don't have time for moral outrage," which stems from her pragmatic approach to reality analysis. Psychological foundations. From a psychological perspective, Pearl demonstrates high self-awareness and cognitive flexibility, enabling her to avoid dogmatism. Her stance aligns with Viktor Frankl's 1946 theory that meaning in life is found through acceptance of reality, even when painful. Pearl refrains from condemning Bonnie Blue's monetization of sexuality. I admire her for living unapologetically, understanding this as a logical choice within the context of liquid modernity. Bauman, 2000. Simultaneously, she empathizes with Tate's frustration, e.g., stemming from the erosion of traditional roles, but does not endorse his nihilism. This approach enables her to maintain emotional neutrality and avoid the trap of polarization. Philosophical background. Pearl's outlook resonates with existentialism, especially Sartre, 1943, who emphasized freedom of choice and individual responsibility in creating meaning. By eschewing moralizing, Pearl respects the autonomy of both Bonnie and Tate, acknowledging that their decisions express freedom even if they carry social consequences. Her reflection on the mental clarity of communities suggests a yearning for meaning without imposing universal norms. Sociological context. In a world marked by Anime, Durkheim, 1897, where social norms are diffuse, moralizing loses efficacy due to the absence of a shared value system. Pearl recognizes that traditional judgments, e.g., condemning Bonnie's promiscuity, do not resonate with younger generations who prioritize individualism. Twenge, 2014. Instead, she offers an analysis seeking understanding rather than condemnation. Significance. Avoiding moralizing allows Pearl to reach a diverse audience, from supporters of traditional values to advocates of emancipation like Bonnie. Her inclusive approach positions her as a bridge within a polarized discourse. How does Pearl's approach differ from traditional commentators? Traditional commentators, both conservative, e.g., critics of feminism, and progressive, e.g., supporters of norm liberalization, often adopt dogmatic or moralizing positions. Pearl distinguishes herself in several key respects. Reflectiveness instead of dogmatism. Conservative commentators, such as some within the manosphere, might condemn Bonnie for promiscuity, while progressives might criticize Tate for misogyny. Pearl, in contrast, analyzes their attitudes with curiosity. I admire Bonnie's courage. I understand why Tate is angry, reflecting introspection. Psychologically, this aligns with self-determination theory, Deci and Ryan, 2000, which emphasizes autonomy in judgment formation. Acceptance of chaos instead of resistance. Traditional commentators often seek to fix society, conservatives by restoring traditional values, progressives by further liberalizing norms. Pearl embraces black pilling, accepting the collapse of traditional structures, but finding meaning in personal development, e.g., learning piano and helping others. Philosophically, her stance echoes Rosa's 2019 notion of resonance, harmonizing with reality rather than resisting it. Pragmatism instead of ideology, Pearl avoids ideological frameworks dominant among traditional commentators. She is neither feminist nor traditionalist, but a pragmatist who analyzes reality as it is. Her observation that isolated communities exhibit mental clarity demonstrates sociological insight into social capital erosion, Putnam, 2000, without prescribing solutions. Significance. Pearl's approach is more analytical, less polarizing, and open to complexity, making her a voice of a new generation grappling with anime and seeking practical answers rather than ideological battles. How does Pearl's black pilling relate to understanding new forms of femininity and masculinity? Pearl's black pilling, life begins when you accept the fall, is a central element of her approach, linking acceptance of social chaos with an attempt to understand evolving gender identities. Black pilling as acceptance of reality. Pearl acknowledges the erosion of traditional structures, e.g., family, gender norms, consistent with Bauman's 2000 liquid modernity. She neither fights this reality as Tate does, women make stupid decisions, nor uncritically celebrates it, as Bonnie does, call me whatever you want. Her acceptance of decline allows her to analyze new forms of femininity and masculinity without prejudice. New femininity. Pearl admires Bonnie for her authenticity and courage in monetizing sexuality, viewing her as a symbol of female emancipation within capitalist frameworks. Anthropologically, Bonnie reclaims control over her sexuality, historically regulated by men, Levi Strauss, 1969. Pearl understands this new femininity, characterized by autonomy and shamelessness, as a logical consequence of feminism and technology, but notes possible costs, such as loneliness. New masculinity. Pearl empathizes with Tate's frustration over lost masculine authority, but rejects his nihilism. I gave up trying to save the world. She sees men like Tate redefining masculinity through self-improvement. Look in the mirror, you're fat, do something about it, but warns of the cynicism risk in his stance. Ethologically, Tate's new masculinity reflects competition, Trivers 1972, yet Pearl suggests men may find meaning in small communities such as farming collectives. Psychological and philosophical foundations. Pearl's black pilling is constructive, combining nihilistic acceptance with the search for meaning. Her understanding of Bonnie and Tate reflects resonance, a harmonious engagement with reality that allows recognition of value in complex new gender forms. Significance. Pearl's black pilling enables an understanding of new femininities, autonomy, sexual capitalism, and masculinities, pragmatism, status redefinition, without judgment, allowing analysis of change without nostalgia as with Tate or uncritical enthusiasm as with Bonnie. Does Pearl's attitude indicate a new form of social discourse? Pearl's reflective, pragmatic, and non-moralizing stance suggests a new form of social discourse that accepts chaos but seeks meaning within it. Characteristics of the new discourse. Traditional social discourse is polarizing based on ideologies, conservatism versus progressivism, and moral judgments. Pearl proposes an alternative, discourse grounded in understanding, introspection, and adaptation. Her statement, I don't have time for moral outrage and reflection on the mental clarity of communities demonstrate an approach that combines individualism with a longing for community. Sociologically, this responds to anime and the erosion of social capital. Differences from traditional discourse. Unlike commentators who impose solutions, e.g., return to patriarchy or further liberalization, Pearl encourages personal responsibility, do something with your life, and small acts of meaning. Her discourse is less normative and more exploratory, resonating with younger generations struggling with liquid modernity. Philosophical foundations. Pearl's new discourse aligns with existentialism and resonance theory, Rosa, 2019. By accepting chaos, black pilling, she proposes that individuals create meaning through choices and relationships, even in a world devoid of clear norms. This contrasts with Tate's nihilism and Bonnie's hedonism. Practical implications. Pearl's discourse could inspire new forms of social debate, e.g., on social media, where polarization dominates. Her popularity, millions of podcast views, indicates demand for such a voice. However, its impact may be limited in a mediatized world rewarding sensationalism, e.g., Tate's rhetoric. Significance. Pearl's stance points to a new discourse that is more inclusive, reflective, and pragmatic. It may become a model for future commentators, especially amid anime and polarization, offering a path between nihilism and dogmatism. Synthesis. Pearl's reflection is pivotal because it avoids moralizing and offers understanding rather than judgment, setting her apart from traditional commentators. Her black pilling integrates acceptance of the decline of traditional structures with an effort to comprehend new femininities, e.g. Bonnie, and masculinities, e.g. Tate, enabling unbiased analysis of social change. Her stance indicates a new social discourse that embraces the chaos of liquid modernity while seeking meaning through personal growth and small communities. In a world marked by anime and polarization, Pearl offers a model that may inspire more constructive debate, though its influence depends on overcoming media-driven polarization. Her significance lies in bridging individualism and community, making her a unique voice in the discourse on the future of gender relations.